Good morning and welcome to the Middle East Program's panel discussion, Understanding and Overcoming Barriers to Entrepreneurship for Women in the MENA region. I'm Marissa Khurma, Director of the Middle East Program here at the Wilson Center. According to the Mastercard Index of Women Entrepreneurs of 2021, less than 1 in 5 working-age females in the Middle East and North Africa region are in the workforce, compared to 7 out of every 10 males. Further, women's entrepreneurship is at a meager 4%, one of the lowest rates worldwide. There are some structural challenges, such as limited access to finance, a limiting legal environment in some countries, and socio-cultural norms as well. Those are some of the major barriers for women entrepreneurs, in addition to a lack of policies to encourage and increase women's ability to work. So this panel will discuss women's entrepreneurship in MENA with a focus on cases of Bahrain, Lebanon, Tunisia, and Saudi Arabia, with the goal of understanding the barriers, but also the opportunities and successful interventions that have been deployed to increase the percentage of women entrepreneurs. I'm delighted to introduce our expert panelists, Lynn Munzir, who's a gender and business specialist with a PhD in female entrepreneurship in the MENA region. Ali Al-Ali is the Executive Director of Strategy and Transformation at Tamkeen, which is an organization that supports private sector enterprises and individuals to drive economic growth in Bahrain. Salwa Sahlul is an international expert on gender and women in peace and security, as well as the Director of Public Relations for Tunisia's Ministry of Women, Family and Children, and Hala Al-Dosari, who's a scholar in residence at the Center for Human Rights and Global Justice, where she researches women's social determinants of health in the Arab Gulf states. Thank you to all of you for joining, and thanks for those of you joining in to listen today. You can submit your questions either via Twitter to @WilsonCenterMEP or through the chat box on your screens. Hala, I'm going to kick this off with you. So given your experience on women's issues in the GCC, can you paint the picture of where we're at in terms of women and economic participation, but particularly entrepreneurship?
Thank you, Marissa. I would say we're actually witnessing increase in women participation in the economic activities in general. And this is very much reflective of women attaining more higher education than their counterparts, than the men in their countries. And of course, a recognition that there is a need to diversify the economy, there is a need to encourage people to be more active in the workforce. So most of the governments in the GCC has actually put some effort in engaging more women in the workforce, basically driven by the need to enhance the economic opportunities and the economic and the diversification of revenues. In general, there are less restrictions on women now than before. For instance, in Saudi Arabia, women are now able to basically commute and travel easily than before. There is more of a representation of women in certain key positions, especially in the leadership position, although this has been really less than men in general. But there are certain problems, which is the legal framework in which women work and the access to information, which also is very much problematic, and also the representation of women voices through associations and through unions, which really lags behind because of the political context in the GCC region. Also the problem of family-owned businesses. We see the growth of family-owned businesses more than any other micro or small to medium level businesses. The small to medium level businesses are also affected by the fact that most of these younger entrepreneurs or small scale entrepreneurs are not able to navigate the difficult structure of the legal framework, the legal and the administrative framework in terms of recruiting people, in terms of reaching out to customers, marketing strategies, basically training and mentoring, and all these things that are needed for small to medium businesses to thrive. This is basically based on historically a trend of keeping women in certain professions and very much aligned, in different profession than the markets in general or the economy in general. So you wouldn't see, the picture similar to other countries where women are educated and have access to the general spaces like other, emerging economy. So this is basically, I would say, a general perception. We would think that enabling more feedback from women entrepreneurs into the picture, enabling more free expression, association, enabling women to get together. And we'll talk later on one example of women business women doing unofficial or informal club where they share information with young entrepreneurs. We're going to talk a little bit more about it later, but I will leave the floor for others.
Great, thank you so much. This is very helpful. And it is encouraging that we're seeing a lot more women's participation across the GCC, but particularly in Saudi Arabia, and more women seeking opportunities also to start their own businesses. So I'm going to stay in the GCC before I move on to Levant and North Africa and turn to you, Alia, to tell us about particularly how the situation is in Bahrain. It seems that there's a lot of activity in the ecosystem to support women entrepreneurs, but there are also challenges, which is part of the process of moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me today, Marissa, and lovely to be with the panel today. I speak as a bureaucrat, so to speak, who I work at the Labour Fund, Temkeen. It's an organization that was established in 2006, the first of its kind in the region that, as you mentioned, works on strengthening the private sector and making Bahrainis the employees of choice in the labor market. One of our mandates is also increasing the economic participation of women in society and the economy. So since then, we've been in existence for 15 plus years. We've run a number of programs that were women targeted, and we've seen some successes, honestly, in some of these. But also, I think what I want to focus on is more maybe not the legal framework, but the challenges we saw when we started running these programs, which might also help other countries that might be embarking on similar experiences or similar endeavors very soon. So I want to in particular talk about a program that we've run an impact assessment on that looked at giving credit guarantee to female entrepreneurs. The program has been running since 2016, and it was a collaboration between the Labour Fund, the Supreme Council for Women, and the Bahrain Development Bank. The goal then and continues to be today is to increase female entrepreneurs' access to finance so they can grow their businesses. And to date, we've served more than 300 female entrepreneurs. 6 out of these enterprises were micro ventures, so similar to what has been said. A lot of them start small and continue to be small for a while. Around 50% of the women who benefited were at the startup phase, while the rest were trying to grow their businesses. We compared this program to other financing programs that we run at the same time. Interestingly, we know that female entrepreneurs are quite responsible. They have the lowest default rate among all different groups, which also can be, we have this fear that, they might not be able to pay their bills. They may not be able to pay the loans at the end of the day, but they actually have the lowest default rate of all. In terms of sector focus, and I think this is an issue that's pertinent to Bahrain, the GCC, and perhaps the wider Arab world, is that 30% of these enterprises were mainly in the in lower productivity sectors, so what we call retail and food industry. And the prospect of growing in these sectors is usually much smaller than if you're in tech, for example. So that's one thing. And I can bore you with the stats, but I don't want to do that because I think maybe we focus on what worked in this program might help. So we've noticed that this program was a stepping stone for a lot of the females that needed access to finance. It helped them build credit histories that helped them later on either go and get their own loans or graduate to other financing programs that we have with larger amounts, and better longer tenors, so to speak. We also believe that betting on women at the time was the right choice because, as I mentioned, the default rate was low, and if not, I think almost all of these enterprises are still in existence today despite the pandemic. And one thing that I think we've done well, and I can't say everything went well, was that we started collecting data from the start. Having gender data is extremely important for us to measure our impact, to measure and evaluate our progress in any agenda that we have. So it's not just about setting up a program, but rather actually putting the processes in place to collect data on how they're doing regularly and compare that to the performance of others. Now, on to things that might have, with every program you design, with every intervention you design, there are unintended consequences. And here we noticed that, some female entrepreneurs were more risk averse than we expected them to be. And this is, honestly speaking, in Bahrain, nothing to do with the legal framework, but it's also perhaps cultural. So we noticed that 60% of women took loans that were below the cap that they can apply for, and that is something that we need to work on. I think through better mentorship, better services that would help women actually maybe take higher risk than they think they should or can take. So that's one thing that we noticed, and another thing that we have also noticed is that they did not grow. Many of these enterprises, given that they're in low productivity sectors, remained micro or remained small, and were not graduating to become medium size or large. Mm-hmm. And here again, I want to emphasize the point, and I'm quite interested to hear from Hala on this, on how we can build better networks for female entrepreneurs. That's something that I feel is lacking, maybe across the region. Also, helping them with business acumen is something that might be important. Given that a lot of them, come from backgrounds where they might have not worked in a professional setting. So a lot of this will need to be provided. And that's something that maybe we missed. However, as I mentioned, maybe I didn't mention that, but we are actually redesigning the program now. And these are things that we're taking into account to make sure that we can better serve women and ensure that they all have better access to financing so they can grow.
Thank you so much, Alia. You gave us a lot to think about, and so many common threads with Hala's earlier comments. I'm going to move a little bit further north to Lebanon and invite you, Lynn, to basically give us the readout on women's entrepreneurship in Lebanon. I mean, there are, the country's facing an avalanche of challenges, but there are some also pockets of hope. But how do you read the situation in Lebanon?
So despite it's kind of different from what's happening in the GCC right now, or even in Middle East and North Africa, where Lebanon is facing major socioeconomic and political development events that's been happening since 2019. So first, the breakdown of the economy, it fall heavier on the financial sector. Second, there's the revolution, the emergence of social opposition movement, and finally the port explosion, which caused a lot of damages and a lot of death. So on top of all of that, we have the pandemic. So all of this made Lebanon the first country in the Middle East to experience hyperinflation and to become the world's third most in-debt nation. This said, that wasn't always the case in Lebanon. With a long history of a trading hub, Lebanon have historically boosted huge potential for well-educated population, enterprising youth, and in innovative tech sector. Typically, Lebanon is regarded as entrepreneurial. Everybody considered Lebanese. I don't want to say that because I'm Lebanese, but that's the view in the in the region, that Lebanese are entrepreneurial. There's no shortage of role models, and there's also, however, there's shortage of data on actual level of entrepreneurship in the country. According to the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor in 2018, nearly 1 in 4 adults in Lebanon was either starting a business or running a new business. This is the fourth highest among 48 countries participating in the study. And it's the second globally, it ranked second globally on proportion of new businesses and on the number of established businesses. So also, again, I'm going back to 2018 because there are more information, more data about entrepreneurship in Lebanon. So in 2018, we have the highest level of women-led startup was in Lebanon was in that period. So again, as Alia mentioned, most of them are in small enterprises, medium to small enterprises, even though they make 50% of national employment and 90% of the companies in Lebanon. So again, almost 10% of the MSMEs are owned by women in Lebanon. However, again, the overall environment in Lebanon for entrepreneurship is insufficient. Men are almost twice as likely as women to be starting business or even running one. The situation for women entrepreneurs, Lebanon have a favorable environment and enabling environment for women entrepreneurship more than the rest of the region, I want to say, but female entrepreneurship is still low. And the majority of women-owned businesses in the country operate in the informal sector, which again, is causing lack of access to finance, lack of exposure, lack of access to any kind of funding as well. Additionally, women in labor force are largely limited to wage employment. And even in that, they're only 24% of the labor force participation. It's definitely lower now, given the high unemployment rate in Lebanon and given the high poverty rate as well. So despite unfortunately, I want to say this, despite the high entrepreneurial spirit in Lebanon, Lebanese women are not yet to reach their full potential for participating in the labor force and starting their own businesses. So that's the general idea of what's going on in Lebanon. I can go in deep for each level, but up to you, Marissa.
Yeah, we'll get to that once we zoom into the legislative, legal. Hala touched upon the administrative, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the financial piece as well as the digital. Salwa, I'm going to turn to you now to talk about Tunisia. You are the Ministry of Women's Affairs. I assume that a lot of the data gathering on women, or at least gender segregated data, is perhaps led by the ministry. This was brought up by both Alia and Lynn. But what is the state in general of women's entrepreneurship in Tunisia today?
Thank you again. Thank you all ladies for being gathered there in this platform to talk about women. But only one remark. I would like that one man in our group to listen to us, to listen to the sufferers of women, to listen of the injustice that suffer women in the Arab world. So I began with the state in Tunisia. Situation is not too different from Bahrain or Lebanon. Yeah, but it's a little much better. We will start with the rates. In Tunisia, there is 21% of women who are unemployed. On the other hand, we see 14% of men unemployed. So from this number, we can deduce one thing. The gates of employment are open for men, not for women. And what hurt me as an intellectual woman, as a woman leader in the region, that 58% of women are licensed and master degrees. So 42 of men have graduation, high-level graduation. And on the other hand, we see 58%. And what is the other disaster? 18% of those graduated and highly graduated population, youth population, 18% are unemployed men, and 41% unemployed with high-level graduation are women. It's blowing our minds. It's like a surprise. In our family, they say to us, you have to have our high-level graduation. We have to learn. We have to succeed. We have to do our master degree. And in the final, we are unemployed. You are a female unemployed. And all the gates for job are open for men. We try to open this gate as Ministry of Women to employ this graduated and highly graduated women and other who have no high-level degrees. We open the door to employ them. We open the door to entrepreneurship. So what did the Ministry of Women in Tunisia? In 1816 to 2020, in 2016 to 2020, they started the program of RAIDA. That does mean leader. RAIDA, it's a program to contribute to employ women, to incite and to encourage them to open their own firm, their own enterprise, their own job. And in this program, we take care not only from the graduated women, also rural women in rural zones. Women, we haven't got men, women without familiar support, and also women in carceral institutions. We give them funds, we give them the right to have their own loan, we give them technical support, and we give them hope to have their own job. So, as a result of this program, there is 4,460 projects with opening of 6,300 positions for working for other women. And during 4 years, around all the state of Tunisia, we take this courage to incite women to go to the entrepreneurship. Why? Because women are afraid. Afraid of what? Of failure. Women are the most honorable creature to take this loan and to honor this engagement. And this statement is a result of search made by the Organization of Labor, International Organization of Labor. So we incited during these 5 years, we incited financial firms, banks to give money and to give loan to this woman because there are a big high credibility with women. The result is positive, but there is other negative results. Why, you say? You say why? Because the COVID in 2020 arrested all this achievement, and we return back because some of these projects was corrupted by men who incite women to give them this amount of money to contribute, to encourage them and to not close this project and their own project. So the situation is not positive. There is a lot of job to do, and through our conference, I think that our recommendation will contribute to solve many problems. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Salwa, for painting the picture of the challenges on the economic front, and particularly entrepreneurship for women in Tunisia. So what I'm hearing here from all of you are, a number of points that I want to go into a little bit more, and I'm going to go back to you, Hala, because you really highlighted the issue of freedom of association, and then the networks, but also talked about the legal environment. And with regards to the association and legal environment, a lot of this is very much connected. So I wonder, from your research and expertise, what other models can we look at to try to address some of these challenges, particularly when it comes to the legal environment and the freedom of association, which would allow women to organize and establish networks that would help them learn from each other?
Yeah, so one of the major problems, especially in the GCC, but I do assume it also exists in other Arab countries, is the fact that association is very limited in general and punishable by laws because of a political reason rather than economic or community development. The UN Human Development Report has actually reported on those barriers since 2002, and nothing has changed in 2005 and ongoing. Actually, it's more of a politically closed environment because of everything that happens in the political context of these regions. There are three main problems that are facing the human development, including women development economically, which are the women's rights in general, and we will talk a little bit more about that, and the political systems, which are very much closed in those countries. That there is no representation of the feedback loop that is needed to inform policymaking or influence policymaking, especially in the economic sector, and the access to information. So one of the key issues of having organization and association not only to share knowledge and mentoring and making sure that younger women can have more access to information and have more experiences through sharing knowledges, but also the problem of making sure that they understand the complex nature of fragmented policies and fragmented different state entities that are actually controlling the economic sectors. And I've talked a little bit about the administrative problems that are facing women. For instance, in Saudi Arabia, many of the women entrepreneurs who have started their own small retail sections, retail services, which is one of the most accessible to women entrepreneurs in Saudi Arabia, that they're starting, restaurants or small retail businesses. The visits by the administrative authorities, which are the municipal authorities, coming to comment on whether there is a separation, there is some kind of violations, and they're charging them higher fees as penalties, which is actually surpasses any kinds of budgeting that they're having for businesses, especially as mentioned by other colleagues, the problem of limited marketing, limited capacity for revenues under the pandemic and other issues. One, of course, of what Salwa mentioned is understanding the private setting in which women live. The fact that most of the women entrepreneurs live within patriarchal culture in which their finances, their decisions in making, in business somehow are influenced, if not controlled, by partners. And this has been something that hinders their ability to have, for instance, more of a independent free will. But of course, one of the main issues as well is that microcredits given to women is more, guaranteed, if you would think of, guaranteed than microcredits given to men. And this has been all over the board. Women would have better, care for their children, better care for nutrition, better care for their families by accessing the microcredit rather than men. And this has been actually guaranteed and proven by so many different studies in the developing countries. So I would say we are still at the position where we should understand the need for association, especially in the economic sector. The experience I wanted to highlight is that of, it started in late 2000 by a group of prominent business leaders, women business leaders in the Eastern Province in Saudi Arabia, in which they started to come together in an informal meeting once a month with people from the commercial council. There is a commercial council actually as part of the city council in every major city inside Saudi Arabia. So they started to invite members of the commercial council to sit together with women business leaders and women who are interested in the business and starting their own business in general. And it's an open salon, if you would think of it. And each woman would actually tell their stories, what kinds of problems, what kinds of challenges they had. And they will negotiate those kinds of problems with members of the council. And it helped at the time that women have been admitted as members in the chambers of commerce or the economic councils of each city. It helped that these women would actually understand and sit down freely with those women and actually transfer those kinds of opinions and feedback to the official authorities, so that they can create more of an easier environment for women entrepreneurs. And out of this meetings, not only women, small business or medium business owned by women were able to thrive, but also there has been some changes in the legal culture. Businesswomen at the time were not able to book in a hotel, in any hotel inside Saudi Arabia without a chaperone or a mahram or a male relative. They were not able to travel, without the chaperones. But there was an exception because of their experience sharing, because of the association. There was changes made for women accommodation in hotels if they are in business. So the leadership in Saudi Arabia decided to allow only businesswomen, not all women, but that of course predates the time of allowing all women to access accommodation in hotels. But there was a special provision for businesswomen to access hotels, to access travel without a male relative at the time. So you get to see how association actually enhances access to information, enhances the ability to influence culture in ways that would address the main troubles or hindrance for women. And I think the learning curve of what Salwa has been, experiences is that they now understand more through engagement with women about what kind of hurdles they have. And it shouldn't be like a negative, I would say, experience or an experience that would hinder decision-making from investing more in empowering women. It should be a learning curve, as I've mentioned, because we don't have data, we don't have information, we don't have access to women entrepreneurs on different, from different backgrounds and different contexts, especially rural women who are not mentioned at all in terms of women development. So it really helps that you're tapping into those types of groups who are marginalized, who are not represented in the economy, and learning what kinds of problems they face in order to design programs that are most responsive to their needs.
Thank you so much, Hala. This was very enriching, and I want to highlight the importance of this feedback loop, where it starts with the association, the sharing, the engagement with authorities, and then those experiences and stories basically become data for policymakers to inform them, to better inform them, to address some of these legal and administrative challenges that you also outlined. Now, the challenge, of course, is how to scale it, and why would the onus solely rest on women? I mean, in the case you mentioned, it seems that the women got together because they felt the need for it, and that is very important. But I want to get to this because Alia, you also touched upon the challenge of networking, and it seems that some of the sociocultural challenges that you also highlighted, Lynn mentioned, as well as Salwa, can probably be addressed in these gatherings because you're stronger in numbers, and when you share a story, you really break the barrier of shame or doubt, and you start slowly becoming a bit more confident about your idea, about sharing your idea. So how do you use some of the data that you have, because you said that you're really focused on the data, to also help form some of these networks or support these networks?
We are working now on this. So we've also run a number of focus groups on the program I mentioned, Riyadat.
Can I ask you to speak up, Alia, because it's a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me now? Yeah, perfect. Okay. Let me go back to the importance of data. That was, and that provided an opening for us to actually, go back and say, okay, let's look into what's going wrong here, or what can we do better. Usually, I think it's the most important point. So while I take the point that we should also listen to the stories. If we're dealing with policymakers, most of the time, at least in my case, I've seen that the data works in terms of conveying some of these challenges and getting solutions for them. I cannot say today that we have cracked the code for the networking issue. I think part of it, and I see it with men as well in Bahrain, not only females, that we're reluctant to associate. And I think maybe we can look more into that, but it's usually, every person is there to talk about their own issues without them thinking that this issue is actually something that, we should look at collectively. And I think we're maybe now taking it a step back and thinking, okay, maybe start with the business acumen, with the financial literacy programs, with things like that, where women can maybe organically form some of these bonds, and then move into more inorganic, networking sessions and things like that.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question on the data. Do you make this data public and accessible, so that, because, going back to Hala's point about basically access or inaccess to information, it is.
Well, not all of it is public. Unfortunately, this is something that we're working on. We've started putting a lot of these reports out on our website now, and hopefully we'll put more out in the next few months as well, to help make sure that some of this is something that we can use for to support others in other countries, and also to help the business owners themselves understand the issues from a data perspective.
Thank you. And then trying to sort of build on this issue of association, networking, and then what that provides in terms of access to information. Would that also help access finance, or are there more issues at the core of that basically stay in people's ways, or women's ways in particular?
Yeah, in Lebanon particularly, we have a lot of women networks, so that's not a problem. We have the Lebanese League for Women in Business. They do specific training to help women, encourage them. It's led by women, done by women, everything. They understand what's going on. They're Lebanese women who live in Lebanon. So that's not a problem for us. The problem for us in Lebanon, especially for women entrepreneurs, is funding. So they have a lot of training. They have a lot of skills. They have and kind of an enabling environment to help them prosper, but there's no funding, there's no finance. So all of what's been happening is going to waste. For example, I've heard a lot of women saying there's no women-led VCs or women leaders in finance. So whenever a female entrepreneur enters to pitch her idea, she's always faced by like 5 to 6 men looking at her, judging her, and she doesn't feel comfortable. She doesn't feel represented. So automatically she decides to walk away. And that's a big problem in Lebanon. I'm sure it's similar in the rest of the region. We have other ones, again, we go to the legal framework. So we have a lot of problem in that sense. Under the Lebanon sectarian personal law system, households and assets are in a man's name, which creates, again, a big problem for women accessing funds. Why? They don't have collaterals. And the existing banking system relied on the previous mention, on the whole idea of having collateral in order to get a fund, they need security to do that. And women do not have any assets. And that's another problem, whether to accessing finance, to feeling safe, and even to growing as business owners. So I want to say that, yes, women in Lebanon, we do have this bundle of association of where we talk to each other, but it's not, the conversation is among civil society and organization. The conversation is not with the government. So everything that's happening in Lebanon, it happens separately because it's a lack of trust in the government. So what happens is we talk to international organizations, get support from everywhere around the world to support female entrepreneurship, but we don't look from within. Again, also addition, all over the region, is like Hala mentioned, we don't have data. So how can we grow? How can we mention and highlight problems if we don't have data? And this is very common all over the region, which is painful because, as you said, if you have data, you can convince others of what's going on. But if you don't have any, or if you have very specific per program, it doesn't work. It doesn't apply for the whole region. So that's another barrier.
So I'm glad that the three of you already talked about data, because we had a data question that came in. So basically you addressed it. Salwa, I want to again build on one of the things that Lynn mentioned with regards to asset ownership and how the legality of it is really very much enshrined in family law or personal status law. But Tunisia has had a new constitution where many of these aspects, particularly in with regards to inheritance, were addressed. Now, is this though implemented in a way to give more women the opportunity to own property or other assets that may help them access finance more easily?
The only article in the Constitution talking about women is about the equality between men and women. So women and men are equal in rights and duties. Unfortunately, in the field of entrepreneurship, there is no law or no proposition to encourage or to support women in this field. It's about opportunity. It's about the law of market. It's about demand and offer. So if you have your network, as Hala say, you have the more opportunity and chance to get your job or to get your own project. If you haven't, you are not able to go forward. We have in 2017 very big project to ensure women in the law of inheritance, to give them the equal right to have the same part of inheritance from their father or mother. We have established a committee to convince population, convince men of religion, to convince all the regressive forces about equality inheritance. And it does work. Also, it was a big dilemma, a big discussion about it. Some people are for, some people are against. And I will surprise you, in our family, about 70% of men are for this change of law of inheritance, and 30% are against, are women. So the big surprise in Tunisia, men support women because he think about his own daughter, how to ensure her, how to give her this insurance to go forward his own project, to have the finance, to have his own word in the firm. It's not about consulting his father or his brother. It's about his own decisions. Mm-hmm. And when we have money, we have the right to decide. We have the right to succeed also. So yeah, this discussion, it was very big, very influential, very, I think, revelating about the problem inside our society and inside our personality, even men or women, because we can find men more feminist than women.
And on that note, I'm going to actually ask all of you to answer one of the questions that came in, and then we will wrap up with one last question, but if we can keep our answers short because we're running out of time. So one of the questions that came in, which is really perfect timing, Salwa, is basically on the role of men in advancing women's entrepreneurship, and not only men in management and leadership positions in the government, but all men. What is the role of men? Hala, over to you.
Well, thank you very much. I would say that the fact that most of the women in the Gulf region, in the Arab region, have attained higher education is a testimony to the fact that men and their families have actually, the majority of men and their families have actually supported women largely in attaining, more opportunities and economic opportunities. But again, we are seeing the problem of inequality and burden in the household, especially when women are entering the workforce. They are also entering marriages with more responsibility at home than men. So I would say a mindset where we are encouraging men to be more responsible, more engaged in the household, more believing in equality, more promotion of gender equality and responsibility towards family is essential. As Salwa has mentioned also about the inheritance, there is also new approaches created by so many advocacy organizations, including Musawa and others, of revisiting the family law, of revisiting the personal status law to allow for shared properties in the household, in marriage or in families, and also encouraging inheritance law revision, as Ellen has mentioned, and especially this is a problem. Even if the law guarantee it, within the family, men has to enforce it and has to change their mindset. So the role of men is essential in the family first, and then in the larger society and the state.
Thank you so much, Hala. Alia, what about in Bahrain? I know that the Supreme Council for Women plays an integral role in basically ensuring that the gender strategy is understood across the board. And in many cases, they have to work with women. But in the world of entrepreneurship, do you see that there is support by men counterparts?
Absolutely, and I don't say this because I'm a female and I also work here, but I think we know from also the data that we have more women owning commercial registrations in Bahrain than men.
Can you speak up, please, because we're losing?
Yes.
Thank you.
So what I'm saying is that we know that we know that men support women's entrepreneurship. The situation is a little bit different here than other countries, in the sense that we know that a lot of the business owners in Bahrain are actually females in terms of commercial registrations. So many of them hold commercial registrations. There are no issues in terms of owning property, doing any of that. The constitution explicitly actually explicit that we cannot discriminate on sex. And very recently, actually, one area that might have needed some attention was equal pay, making sure that females and that there was a legal stipulation that females also should earn the same. This recently, also has been done. So and hopefully it will have a lot of women. So it's not just I think what we're facing are issues of access, but also the equality of access and opportunity, and that is what is important. But again, we cannot say that men have been against what the Supreme Council is doing or what we're doing here. As Selva mentioned, I think the biggest advocates for us as well are the men that are around us.
Thank you. So Len, I would like to know a little bit more about sort of support across the board in Lebanon, particularly amongst males towards female entrepreneurship, but also I'm going to inject another question, which is where I would like this conversation to sort of move, which is whether the digital space actually opens up more opportunities for women, but also perhaps helps explain to male counterparts why female entrepreneurship is important.
So engaging men, we're engaging them on 3 levels. As Hala said, on household level, to participate in a household. On a second level, on the community level, as men influencing men on their perception of women. And finally, on a policy level, where we need more men to advocate, to change of policies and law, to be more inclusive, to be more equal, and to be more supportive. And we see some of it now with the latest election in Lebanon, where we have 8 elected women. However, during even the first sessions, we see male attitude towards women, which is it's actual representation of the society. So the way they perceive and they treat women, even their equals, is very equals in the sense like they have the same position in the government. It's demeaning. So the whole attitude needs to change. The digital level is very important. I've seen firsthand how technology is revolutionizing the way women are doing business and trade. Since the pandemic, a lot of people lost their jobs. Most of them are women, and another portion is men. So what women did is use social media to start their own businesses. They took advantage of the digital of the technology to start a business, to find another source of income for the household, and to keep their family going. Another one is fintech. Fintech is very important. We're still trying to understand it in the region. In Lebanon, we're still a bit far behind from the rest of the region, but financial technology is very important because it provides access to women, even in rural areas, to money as well. So in that way, the money doesn't have to go through a mail in order to reach a woman. Through fintech, women are have direct access to money. They have direct access to their sales. They don't need a third party to be involved, which is usually a male member of the family, to be involved in order to get their finances together. So we see it in e-commerce, we see it in financial technology, and we see it in advancement in education. They have more access to networks. It's making life easier, and it's giving access to every woman in the region.
Thank you. Salwa, you already talked a little bit about male support, so I want you to sort of just zoom into the digital space and how that opens up opportunities for women, whether it's access to e-commerce opportunities or skilling or upskilling or even networks.
Mm-hmm. A very good point. And I think that you have the future vision about the issues to women and the solution to women to go into entrepreneurship with the strength and with the good chance. Because technology gives women economic inclusions, the chance to be in the market, to be in the field like men. In my job in the Ministry of Women during all these years, what we can remark and what we can observe that women, as I say in the first, are highly educated than men, with more than 50% of high education certificate, and especially in the field of technology and TICs. After that, they go to the job and they try to have their own project. During all our process as women, we are in one time mothers. And this point can be an obstacle for women entrepreneurs to succeed their project. And during 9 months of pregnancy and during 4 months of maternity, so during about 1 year, they don't be in the field. They don't ensure the success of their project. Women in technology and in putting all their skills and technology can succeed their project. And I think that technology is an arm. It's a good arm for women to go in the field of success in entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So we are going to wrap this up, and my question to all of you, and we'll try to do under 1 minute, in terms of policy recommendations. So if you have one key policy recommendation that you want to highlight in order to see not just, slight differences in women's entrepreneurship, but real significant progress on that front to really unlock the potential. We've all talked about the paradox of having more women tertiary education graduates than men, but then this not translating into economic participation of entrepreneurship. So what is that one policy recommendation you want to highlight? Hala.
Well, I would say having a strong feminist movement is the key. Basically, this is something that is not very much flourishing in the Arab region, let alone in the Gulf region. But I think having more women-informed voices in policies in terms of personal barriers, in terms of societal or administrative barriers, or in the legal barriers, having spaces, especially as mentioned by others, the tech environment and platforms is indeed ideal for promoting women's work and women, economy, but at the same time problematic when it comes to the legislation, when it comes to protection of property rights, which is largely problematic in the Arab region. When it comes to ensuring that it is a safe place for women to be there, it is a safe place for women to be, engaging in those kinds of platforms. In addition to having platforms where it is easily for people to access and to, engage with women, businesses in a clear and in a effective manners, which is also lacking. Instagram or Facebook or other platforms are not necessarily the business-oriented platforms, or even YouTube, which is the platform for many entrepreneurs to engage. These are not sustainable or business-oriented platforms. To create those kinds of platforms, this is a more of an additional policy recommendation. So I would say the one policy recommendation is to be informed by women voices, to encourage more women association, and the strong feminist movement.
Thank you, Hala. Alia.
Thank you, Marissa. I think the one policy that I would advocate here in Bahrain and the rest of the region is to rethink the way we work. So work doesn't have to be a 9-to-5 job for everybody. Making sure that our policies or regulations are adaptive to the change that has hit us, during the pandemic, where women can participate economically in part-time, in freelancing, in whatever kind of capacity to be part of the economy would be something that we should focus on.
Thank you so much. Lynn?
On top of what's mentioned already, we need to talk about the laws. The existing laws are gender neutral, and that doesn't help. They need to be gender sensitive. They need to talk about women. They need to talk about women's rights. They need to involve that. It's not something we do later on. No, it should be included as we change the laws, as we move forward. We shouldn't just say, oh, let's just fix this, which happens all the time in Lebanon, and then we'll talk about gender, or then we'll talk about women. That's one of the major problems. Another one, we talked about the inheritance laws. We need to change the personal status laws and practices in order to give women access and control over financial resources, which helps the household first and the economy second.
Thank you, Lynn. Salwa.
Thank you again for Hala and Alia, because they mention the point of networks between women, because this interaction give women support, psychological support and technical support. But I will start from a fact. During my experience in the Ministry of Women, I talked with women who get their projects, and we get their financement, and we get our technical support from the state, from the Ministry of Women. And for 100 projects, only 40 projects succeed, and 60% fail. Okay, and this is, I think, in all the Arabic world. The chance to succeed, it's not for the first time. You have to repeat and to re-engage yourself and to learn more about our mistakes, to be a good entrepreneur, a good female entrepreneur. From the other side, I have many relations with businesswomen in the National Chamber of Businesswomen. And about 90% of those talented women, they inherit their job and their project from their parents. Okay, they work in the firm of their parents, of their mother or father or brother. What I observe that when we are born in a family of entrepreneur, you get the skills from your start, from your new age, from your childhood, and when you are teenager, all of those women are working in the summer holiday with their parents, and they learn and they practice. This gives me the chance to take an observation and to realize that to be an entrepreneur, especially a woman entrepreneur, you have to learn from your young age. It's not about 20, 25 years or 30 years to be an entrepreneur. You have to educate our children, especially our daughters, to be independent, to have their own job and to succeed. And I think that our networks, Hala and Alia and Lean, can contribute to give our skills and the skills of our men entrepreneurs in the college, in the schools, and to incite them and encourage them to go forward the word of entrepreneur. This gender and this positive discrimination to female entrepreneur will give us a generation of high-level entrepreneur and high-level and talented women. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Salwa. You highlight a very important point about ensuring that the education systems are reforming and are including this, pedagogy in the system, one that encourages more of a growth mindset, accepting failure, learning from failure, and constantly being practicing, learning by doing, as opposed to rote learning where you're just listening to a teacher all day. Thanks to all of you once again for sharing your expertise. This was a very enriching conversation. Thanks for the questions that came in, and for all of you listening. Thanks for tuning in. Hala Al-Dosari, Lynn Munzer, Ali Al-Ali, and Salwa Sahlul. Thank you once again, and we hope to continue this discussion to move these important recommendations forward.